I'm going to say it, the best Detroit Red Wings beat writer, in my opinion, from The Athletic, Max Bultman.
For sure.
Joining us today on the Woodward Heavyweights. What up, Max?
What's going on, man?
Not much, guys. Thanks for the intro. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. We're the new show on the network. We got our guy Mikey in the TD booth, and he's training. So, we're cruising along. We're getting things done. Trying to fit Spencer's head in the boxes,
Yeah, you got to make sure it fits.
Hey, I'm big head too. I know the struggle.
There we go. We all got the problems to deal with. So, obviously, we know, Stevie Y went out there and got his guy. We know why it took so long, because he was waiting for Tampa to finish up their season before they could go poach him. What were your first reactions of Derek Lalonde being added to the Red Wings as their head coach?
Yeah, I think, like you said, not too surprised. I think this was one of the outcomes that was more predictable of the process. I mean, certainly you go back to the familiarity that he had with him, and I think that's a big part of it, but also just the experience on a winning team in Tampa Bay and what Derek Lalonde would have been able to see in that locker room over the transformation of the Lightning really these last 4 years. They've been a good team for a long time, but they turned from a team that was really skilled and could play really a premium finesse game into a team that could beat you any number of ways. They can still play that game, but oftentimes, now in the playoffs, their recipe was to play, really responsible, tight checking, beat you 2-0 or 2-1 or even 1-0, and go back to that Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Islanders last year. They transformed as a team. They learned how to win in the proverbial way, and obviously the Red Wings aren't to the point where they're doing really either of those two things right now. But I think having a coach who's shown he can do both as part of that staff is a big deal.
Max, last time we had you on, and thank you for joining us, by the way, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it a lot.
My pleasure.
You're my go-to when I'm doing all my Red Wings hockey homework. But when they brought him on, and obviously we're bringing up Soderblom, and Evanson's making the jump now too. Like, with this new coach, are we allowed to be excited? Like, how excited should Red Wings fans be, and how excited are we allowed to be? Like, can we say wild card playoffs, or should we just chill out a little bit?
It was really interesting. He was actually asked at the press conference today, is there a reason why this team shouldn't be a playoff team? And I was really interested in it, because that's, I think it's a fair question. It's also a potential stumbling block, right? Like, if you're the new coach and you're going to come in, like, what kind of expectations are you going to put on yourself? But he kind of immediately said, I'd have to temper the expectations there, and we'll see. We got to make it about the process. But I thought it was interesting. He said, when he was going through the interview process with Yzerman was making clear, it's still a process. We're still trying to do it right. That didn't sound to me like a situation where that's the expectation internally, or even, we'll see what they're going to do in the off season here. Didn't sound like to me that kind of proverbial putting the foot on the gas. It sounded to me like maybe a little more of the continued process. So as much as I want to tell Detroit fans, who I know are so hungry and deserve a real honest playoff push here from one of these teams, I don't know that I'm ready to say it's going to be the Red Wings this season. I think it may be another one. But hey, let's see. They may have a surprise or two in store this offseason that could change that. But as presently constructed, I'd probably pump the brakes on that.
Yeah, we're all about hopium here. It's all about what we're doing with all our different teams.
Drives the numbers, man.
So we know what Blashill was good at. He was brought in. He was the development guy. We saw that with what he did with the Griffins and different things like that. Is that Lalonde's strength? Is that something that he can work with? Because we've got a lot of young guys coming in here, like Easy said, with Soderblom, with Edvinsson, with all of these guys that are eventually going to come up and be on this team. Is that one of his strengths, that he can turn these guys into legitimate NHL players?
I think so. I mean, so he's coached at every level, and a lot of those have been with young players, right? NCAA, the USHL, ECHL, and AHL are still in a lot of ways, those development leagues. And he talked about, when he was asked, like, what's your greatest strength, the first thing he said was communicator. And I think those two things go hand in hand, right? Like, what's the most important thing for developing a young player is you got to be able to get through them. And so when you talk about those relationships and how to communicate, those are skills that he clearly has in his bag from his path up and the places that it's taken him. And I do think that'll be a part of his but I don't think it's going to be limited to young players, I guess is what I mean. Like, you're going to have relationships with veterans too. You're going to have relationships with your kind of prime age guys, your Larkins and your Bertuzzis, that are really important. But to your point, yes, I think, as you start to see some of these prospects continue to make their way in, certainly his track record would suggest he knows how to work with young players. He knows how to get through them and connect with them. We'll see how it goes, but I think the track record is there.
Awesome.
Do you have any idea or heard any whispers about him possibly bringing in guys from that Tampa bench along with him?
I haven't. I don't know how to, maybe I've obviously, you're not the first person to ask about that. I'm not aware of it at this time, but I don't really know how to handicap that one. I mean, I think they're going to need obviously a defensive coach and a goalie coach. But if I'm Tampa, I'm not really eager to let someone take my assistants away to go to the same job for a division rival, right? Even though they're at different points of the cycle.
Our guy Mike Gentry in the booth, he's a big hockey guy. He's got a couple questions for you.
Oh, what's going on, Max? Nice having you in. I just have one question for you. How important is it for a guy like Steve Yzerman to get a guy that he's familiar with and has experience in his system? And is there any one thing that stood out for you today at the press conference?
Yeah, great questions. I think number one, Yzerman made it clear early in the process. Number one, he wasn't going to let it be too big an obstacle, but he did say he thinks his best hires, I think is what the quote was, have been guys who knew kind of how he likes to operate. And I think that is important with Yzerman, who, he does things, he likes things a certain way. He's got his experience. And he also can be a pretty, I understand, certainly from dealing with the media, he can be intimidating. He likes to stick to his way, and certainly doesn't like a lot to get out, as you guys well know. So I think it's probably important more so from the operational side of things, but understanding how to work in an Yzerman organization probably does matter familiarity-wise. In terms of something that stood out, I think it's just those things we've been talking about. It's he views himself as a coach whose foundation is in his relationships and in his communication, and then obviously that little aspect about Yzerman saying we're doing this the wrong way and still having patience. That caught my ear just looking ahead to free agency a little bit.
Yeah, and adding on to that, like you said, now we have our coach. We have the guy that's going to be in there. He's going to be the head man. What do you see the Red Wings, Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings doing in free agency? Do you see them going after, obviously there were talks about Pasternak not being happy in Boston, maybe wanting to get out of there. Is there a big splash move? Do you see that coming, or do you see more of just going out, getting maybe a Palat, maybe a guy like that, a good veteran piece?
Yeah, I think much more like the latter, and we'll see if Palat even makes it to free agency at this point. Lightning may end up doing everything they can to keep him in town. I don't see the big splash, but I do think there's a couple areas that they're going to have to improve. They have to do something on the left side of the blue line, and I think ideally you would do something on the second line center as well. You could get by another year with Pius Suter, but I think especially if you want to keep taking steps, and in my opinion, now that you've hired a new coach, you got to do everything you can to put him in a position to at least take a step forward. Doesn't mean necessarily the playoffs, but take a step forward so that those players feel that positive momentum. Those would be the first two things that come to mind. But in terms of that big splashy player, the top free agents, Johnny Gaudreau and Philip Forsberg, I would be very surprised if that was a Detroit lane, personally speaking.
Johnny Hockey to the D. I'd love that. That would be awesome.
Real quick, too, I want to apologize for laughing earlier, Mike, when Mike Gentry had his camera on and stuck on him while you were talking. It's just, I couldn't help but to laugh at it.
I'm like, what is that, something on my forehead? What's going on here?
No, I double-clicked over.
No, my fault, man. You were talking, he was just stuck on the screen, confused as shit. Real quick, I had a question about free agency, but I want to ask you about the draft. The guy, I'm diving into hockey just now.
He's Swedish elite.
He's
our Swedish insider. Yeah.
Lemeraki, or how the hell you say his name?
Lekaramaki.
How you say it one more time? I apologize.
Lekaramaki.
I watched a little bit of him, and I like what I see, but I also don't know what the hell I'm saying. I'm not a fair case of judgment. Like, what do you think about the draft coming up, and what are the guys that you like, for the Red Wings to land?
Well, you got good taste. He's a good player. He's a really highly talented offensive player, good shooter, and a versatile offensive skill set. I'd say most of the value comes at that end of the ice, but we'll see. And the Red Wings are a team that there's not just one need that they have, right? Like they need help. You could say, okay, are you getting kind of a power play offensive specialist? But hey, they need that too. So I would not be surprised if he's in the mix for them. Same with a Finnish winger, Joakim Kemmel, who's similar, maybe a little bit like more of an edge to his game. And then you got in the same league, if you want to stick with the Swedes, since that's your specialty, you got a center who I like named Marco Kasper. He's technically Austrian, so I don't know if that crosses him off your list, but he does play in the Swedish Hockey League. And he's a really good 200-foot two-way center.
Nice.
I'm actually going to check him out because, you know what, that's a lot easier name to say.
Go do your homework. Yeah.
When I'm
Well,
bullshitting.
and there's another guy in the Western League I like for them, Matthew Savoy. Really good player.
Yes.
Undersized, but good competitiveness, good shot, good skill, good speed. So those are 4 guys who I think it's worth looking into. Frank Nazar, a lot of people around Detroit are excited about. He's a local kid actually from Mount Clemens, and he's one heck of a skater, blazing fast with some skill and some offense and some playmaking. So it'll be a good group for them to choose from there at 8, I think.
So, Max, before we let you go here, again, we appreciate you joining us here on the Woodward Heavyweights on the Woodward Sports Network. I just want to get your bold prediction for the Red Wings next year. What is this season going to look like? How are they going to end up?
I think it'll be an improvement from this year, but I don't know how much. I think like you're looking still kind of in that right around 80-point range, and you know, where does that land you? Probably still right there around the back half of the top 10. I'm interested to see. So the top of next year's draft class is really highly touted. Connor Bedard is one heck of a prospect, and certainly we've seen it in the past, including this year, where a guy like that comes into his draft year and some of the hype deflates. My guess is that's not going to happen here. How many teams are going to be willing to be really bad in an attempt to try to get him? The lottery's supposed to prevent this. We know pretty well it doesn't, not really at least. The league doesn't stop teams from trying. So I'll be very curious. It's possible that the Red Wings could move up in the standings just because there's other teams who don't want to be that high in the standings, right? Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. But I still think they're right around the 80-point range. But if they're able to be better than that, that's great. And honestly, Alex Nedeljkovic, the version of him that we saw the first half of the season and then that last month, is enough to get the Red Wings one step higher than that and make them kind of a team that's like in the 80 to 90 range, which I think would be a real step forward for them. But if he's able to do what he did for the first half of the year, that's not out of the realm of possibility. But he's still got to show that consistency as a full-time starter. That's probably your X factor, along with obviously whatever they do this offseason.
For sure.
Max, you're the best in the biz, man. I appreciate you. Actually, one more. I just want to squeeze one because we're not on the radio yet, so I can go a little bit longer. I want to ask you about Sebastian Cossa. Everyone's hyping him up a little bit too.
Yeah, no, I mean he just had a obviously long playoff run. They won the Western Hockey League, and he had a nice run with them there. They unfortunately went out early in the Memorial Cup, so he didn't get those playoff games in the Mem Cup. They were the team that was eliminated in the round robin. But in overall, like, he played a lot of hockey this year on, I thought, the best team in Canada. I guess they didn't win the Memorial Cup, so they can't claim that title. But certainly the best team in Western Canada, and he was a huge part of that. I mean, he was a force for them in the playoffs. He had plenty of shutouts. You know, you have to adjust down for, he is on a really good team, and he should be expected to win a lot of those games, and the shot totals were usually pretty lopsided. But I think at the end of the day, still very much the potential starting goalie of the future for the Red Wings, and we'll see where they put him. That's the thing I'm most curious about for next year. Are they going to send him back? Or do they want to turn him pro and get him going? And it won't be Detroit, but do they want to get him going in Grand Rapids or Toledo, or they want to leave him in Edmonton in the Western League? That's the big question for me on Cossa this offseason.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like Stevie's building a Bishop Vasilevsky duo again here in Detroit with Ned and Cossa.
Hey, I'm sure they would love it if that's the outcome there. Certainly, like, I think the Bishop trade was one of the first things that popped into my head when they made the Nedeljkovic trade. You know, Vasilevsky's going to be tough bar for anybody, and frankly, Bishop's a high bar too. But you know, I got no problem with them trying. If they come anywhere close, it's a pretty good situation.
That's for sure.
Well, Max, I appreciate you joining us, man. Did you have any other questions? I apologize.
No. I appreciate all the time, man. Thanks,
for sure,
thanks
man.
for coming and dropping some knowledge on us.
Next
we really
time,
appreciate it.
I'll make sure Mikey knows how to make the transition, so I'm not stuck giggling at him.
My pleasure, guys. I appreciate you having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you, Max.
Thanks so much,
Take it
man.
easy, Max.
See ya.
Give me some ganja. 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 Give me some ganja.